Hey Bob, how are you?
Carlos, it's so early. What are we doing here?
It is. I was like, I think I lost out on some sleep. I'm not sure.
Well, what's up,
um,
Carlos?
Welcome back, everybody, for another Friday hangout with Carlos and Bob. Today we have a special guest. Bob is a friend of yours, and I
This
met
is
him through you.
yeah.
Fortunately for me.
This is an old friend of mine that I used to work with many, many years ago, back in my animation studio days. Zach Strebeck, and he goes. I believe he goes by Zachary now because
Well, it's my professional name.
It does sound
he's
more
got ahead of made
professional.
himself an attorney. Look at that. He used to be an animator. Zach came in. I think he was 20 years old, soaking wet when he came into this studio. I remember him celebrating his 21st birthday. I looked at him and I was like, "Oh man, do I feel old?" Now I feel even older. So, anyways, let's introduce him formally. So, Zach, can you tell folks a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you're up to?
All right. Well, I'm originally an East Coaster, but I moved to the West Coast and went to law school, and now I'm a lawyer. I was a former animator. I worked with Bob, like he said, animating children's games. So a little bit about the computer game industry, at least back in the late 90s, was it? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So, yeah, now I'm a lawyer. I basically work with game developers, either board game developers, software developers, and I love it. I'm also a digital nomad, which is a person that sort of works from their computer and travels around the world. So right now I'm in Tokyo, Japan, and it's 11 p.m., but I've been all around Asia and all around the U.S. over the last year working the whole
I've been
time.
seeing some great pictures of you traveling around China and yeah. So how does that happen? How do you make that happen? Talk a little bit about that for a sec.
I'll just, a lot of your audience is freelancers, the people that work for themselves. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur my entire life. This was not something I chose originally. I wanted to work for a big company, maybe a movie studio or a game company as a lawyer. But I had a mentor in during law school, and he had gone out on his own very early in his career, and it seemed like the thing to do, to start my own business. And because I've done that, it's allowed me to sort of focus my practice just on things that would allow me to work remotely. So I don't go to court. I don't have to show up for any appearances. I draft contracts and I do intellectual property work, but it's all stuff that I can do over the internet. So the internet has made it possible where I can work from anywhere. The only problem is the time zones. So I have phone
So you
calls
gotta
at
stay up
3
late.
a.m. sometimes, right? But
That's a great example of choosing your path and really designing your work life and your lifestyle around what you want to do. So I think that's wonderful what you've created for yourself there.
Right, and I think it's easier probably for an artist or a creative type to do this. I mean, there's tons of web designers and graphic designers doing this kind of work from all over the world. You could be in Mexico on the beach, doing your artwork rather than in New York City or something. As long as you, focus yourself and make it happen. For me, I'm not married. I, don't have kids, so I just sort of, I sold everything. I sold my car. I sold, pretty much every big thing that I owned, and I travel around. I have a backpack and a little gym bag, and that's all I need.
So how long have you been in Japan?
I've been in Japan for a little over a month now. I was in
plan on
China. I'm sorry.
And you plan on staying there how long?
They're going to kick me out in February, and so I'll probably leave, maybe go to South Korea for a few weeks, and I think I might come back to Tokyo, actually. So, yeah, and I'll be back in the States for the summer.
That's pretty fun. Now, do you have clients over there when you're traveling around? Are you visiting
No.
people that you work with?
No, all my clients are in America. So, I'm not licensed to practice law in Japan or in China or anywhere else that I've been. So all my clients are in America. I get paid in America. The work is sort of based in America. I just am doing it over the internet.
That's really fascinating. Look at you go, man. Just remember you sitting over at your little desk there.
Yeah.
Eleanor and Frankie.
Right.
And it's really cool because I think I think a lot of there's a few illustrators and designers that I know of that have done that purposefully, where they're traveling, they'll take like 6 months and travel the world or whatever, and they're able to do that because they're working remotely.
Right.
But I think there's another larger segment out there that probably, maybe people that have been in the business for a long time, and maybe it's because they have families now and they're more settled than maybe like Bob and I, just can't like pick up and leave. But I think there's another segment in there that maybe don't have those ties keeping them where they are, but they just never probably considered, hey, I can do this. I didn't actually even start doing it till just a few years ago when I had the cabin up in North Carolina where I would go up for the summer for like 2 months. And just because I could, I could just like work and be out in North Carolina. I didn't have to be here in Palm Beach.
Right.
And that was cool because, I mean, that's when I really realized, hell, I could really like be like anywhere and still do what I'm doing. I could even move to a location where it's cheaper to live, where expenses, housing might be cheaper. If I can cut my expenses, that's a quick way to increase my revenue. If I can decrease my expenses by 30%, I've just increased my revenue by 30% by doing nothing more than just working in a place that's more affordable. And so I think that's a really good point to make for people that's absolutely a possibility for them.
I mean, for instance, I lived for the first 6 months of this year most of the time in Thailand, and I mean, you could get by in Thailand for $600 or $700 a month. If you're just starting out in a business like I was, and your revenue isn't huge, then for the cost of less than an apartment, I mean, it's half an apartment in LA where I'd come from, to being able to do your entire life for that month, pay your entire expenses for a month on almost nothing. It's great.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I know that it's really, like Bob said, I think it's like midnight over there right now for you.
11:18. 11. It's not bad. I'm a night owl anyway.
Pretty damn close to midnight, I think.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on, and I know you'd probably rather be sleeping or watching late night television or something.
Nothing I would rather be doing than this. Actually, I'm pretty excited. I don't often do
they have those late night infomercials over there.
They have weird game shows and weird other TV, so I don't even watch it. The TV's back there, but I don't even turn it on.
How do you do with the language, Zach, when you go to these different places? I mean, how do you get along?
Well, actually, I have another blog called lawyerabroad.com where I talk about things like this because I basically get these PDF sheets that I bought from a company, and they have all the basic phrases, and I put them into a flashcard program that does something called spaced repetition. So whatever. I won't get into the details, but it's basically flashcards, and you just learn the basic phrases, just enough to get by. I mean, or you meet local people and they help you. People that will speak English here, that's the way I do it.
Well, you mentioned that when you were in China, you had sort of a celebrity thing going on. Can you talk about that a little bit? That's kind of cool.
Like, for instance, when I was in Beijing at the Forbidden City, they have the option to put on these costumes, these like Chinese emperor costumes. And so I put it on, and then suddenly 6 girls run up to me, and they all want their picture taken with me, and they're all in the costumes too. I mean, and then once people see them getting the picture, everyone else wants the photo with me. Very weird, because I'd never had that celebrity status. I felt like Brad Pitt. And people just walking down the street would give me high fives and just say hello, just because that's all the English they knew. It was pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that sounds like fun. I did like that costume. Maybe we put that on the show notes and have a couple pictures of Zach's. Yeah,
definitely do
cool.
that.
That's pretty cool. So let's we're going to switch gears just a little bit here. We had some questions that people were interested in asking you. Some legal things about artwork and that kind of stuff. And I was wondering if maybe you wouldn't mind going through some of those and just taking a look at a couple of these different questions. So I got my little list here, and I thought maybe we could start off with copyright. Can you talk a little bit about copyright, why it's important, and a little bit how it works? There seems to be sort of a there's a fuzzy area for a lot of artists around copyright. How does it work? How does it apply? Does it, is it something I have to register? Why would I register? All those kind of things. I think people just get confused about that stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So is it important? Of course, I'm a copyright lawyer, so I'm going to think it's pretty important. But I think it's important for artists from both directions. You need to know what rights you have as a creator, and then you need to know what rights other people have so you're not infringing on their rights. So I remember when I was in art school, we heard all these myths. They talk about what they call the poor man's copyright, where you put your art in an envelope and mail it to yourself, and now I have proof. I've got proof. I don't need to register my copyright. There's two problems with that. First of all, copyright exists as soon as you draw a picture or write a story or do anything. As soon as you, what they call it, fixing it in a tangible medium. As soon as you do that, you have copyright protection, at least in the United States and probably most of the world. So you don't need to register anything to already be protected. So sending it to yourself in an envelope actually doesn't do anything. And it's not even really proof because you can show the dates on your digital files, or there's a million different ways you can show what date you made something. So the second, I said there were two problems with poor man's copyright. Yeah. So yeah, you have copyright as soon as you make something. So the other thing is when you want to register the copyright, there's some benefits. It's cheap. It's $35 to register something, and sometimes you can register a group of things within one registration. So if you have a series of drawings or a book full of illustrations, you can register that as one piece. It's $35. You could pay a lawyer more to do it for you, or you could do it yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. The benefits you get are, so while you have protection when you just draw it, you don't necessarily, you can't do anything about it. So you can't actually sue someone unless you've registered the copyright. So a lot of people will hurry up and try to register it and then file their lawsuit. But sometimes it takes a long time, so it's better to register it sooner than later, before it's been stolen, right? And if you register it quickly enough, you actually get something they call statutory damages, which if you have to sue someone for stealing it, you get much bigger damages, and it's easier to prove. You don't actually have to prove how you were damaged to get money back, right? So those are some of the benefits of registration. There's other ones, like it's putting everyone on notice. They call it constructive notice because everyone isn't really on notice, but it's on the federal database, so everyone's supposed to know. Let me look. I made some notes. So
now, let me ask you a quick question. You mentioned, like, if you're creating something digitally, because I know that this is probably something that a lot of us old-timers probably did back in the day before digital files, is to send stuff to ourselves. I know I've sent a couple of things to myself, 15, 20 years. But let's say you don't have the digital files. It's like original art. How do you date that? And would it be helpful to do that if you have physical sketches that you're drawing on paper and stuff?
Sure. Would it be helpful to mail it to yourself? I don't know that a court will accept this envelope, that they have to open it up and see what's inside. I don't know if that's really proof. I don't know. I'm not a trial lawyer, so I don't usually deal with those issues. But there are better ways to provide evidence. You can. I don't know.
It looks like in this day and age, you've got a phone right on your, you got a camera right on your phone. Just take a snapshot, and then there's your digital evidence right there.
In a lot of, the only way someone's going to get your art is because you've published it somewhere, you've put it somewhere. So that publication is also evidence. So was it in a magazine, or was it put up on your website, or all these things leave a trail. So that's also other ways to do it.
So what kind of recourse do you have if you find that somebody's taken your art? And I think almost every illustrator out there has found this at one time or another. What do you do when that kind of thing happens? Well,
seriously, there's a couple levels. First of all, you can try to just get the art taken down. So if someone's posting it, this literally just happened to me last week. I had a blog post on a big gaming business site, and I noticed it popping up on some other sort of cheap, shoddy websites, just whole cloth. They've just taken it and posted it up there. So what I did, you send a letter. It's called a DMCA takedown complaint, and so you send it to the web host, and they are by law required to disable access to that or take it down. Okay. So that's the first line of defense. If there's two ways to think about it. Do you want to just do it to just get a bunch of money from them, or do you want to do it to actually get the copies taken down? So that's one way to get it taken down. If it's just some joker that's putting up a website, he probably doesn't have any money, so it's not worth suing them, right? You have to think about these sort of real-world considerations. Suing someone is expensive.
Right.
It takes a long time. This is going to be months and maybe years before you actually get anything back. You've already paid probably that much in attorney's fees. So it's probably better to just try to get the stuff taken down and move on with your life. But if it is a really big deal, the statutory damages, like I talked about, they can go from anywhere from $30,000 per violation to $150,000 per violation if it's a willful infringement, which means like they knew they were doing something bad and they went ahead with it anyway. So there's a potential for getting damages. The only question is, how long do you want to wait? How much money do you want to put out? And will you be able to find a lawyer that'll work maybe on contingency so he'll get paid later when you actually get damages back?
Right, and the likelihood of recovering that is usually pretty slim at some points, isn't it?
Well, it all depends on who if Apple takes your stuff and puts it on their website, then that's one thing. But if it's me, you don't want to come after me for $50,000.
We will come find you in South Korea.
Pro tip, yeah. Don't send that. Yeah.
And where you mentioned the letter. Where would people get a copy of this letter? Or a template, or
right. So I actually have one on my blog that I posted a few months ago. So I made a special page for people who are watching this. It's strebeck.law.com. You can see in my lower third there / drawn by success. So if you go to that site, it'll pop up a few things that I'll probably talk about at the end of this. But I'll make sure and post that post about DMCA takedowns.
Cool.
So I have a sample letter and I have another one sort of explaining it.
Excellent.
Okay, so we're as we sort of continue on this copyright thing, one of the questions that we had somebody write in about, and I'm actually curious about this myself, is how far can we get on the opposite side? So now I'm an artist. I'm looking around. I like to do caricatures and funny drawings and things like that. So let's say that I picked up a drawing or I created a drawing of maybe something like Spider-Man or something like that. But it's not really Spider-Man. It's like my take on Spider-Man. Now you see this on the web all the time. You see a lot of this stuff for sale. You see like, hey, here's my take on whatever Star Wars or whatever, these kind of things. And you see people selling these things. I imagine that the legality on that is pretty fuzzy, if not, out and out copyright theft.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know where you see a lot of this is at Comic-Cons, where artists are drawing like licensed properties, and people are paying them to draw like Superman or whatever. You see a lot of that at Comic-Con.
Right. And so I would say this. Copyright infringement or trademark infringement sometimes, it requires two things. First, there has to be infringement, and then someone has to actually know about it and sue about it. So if you're at Comic-Con just sort of drawing a picture of Wolverine or something, Marvel Comics probably doesn't see that you're doing it, and they're not going to know, right? And they're probably not going to sue you over one tiny drawing. But if you made a T-shirt with your drawing of Wolverine on it, and you're selling it and making a lot of money, then you become a target. And it's their character. If you're not allowed to make it, it's
right. So as long as it's recognizable as their character, no matter what take on it.
Yeah. So I'll get a little nerdy. Copyright requires two things. Copyright infringement requires two things. You have to have access to it, which in the case of something like Wolverine, it's obvious. It's been published. It's everywhere. And it has to be substantially similar to the original thing. So if you're taking all the elements of Wolverine and putting it on a shirt, even though it's drawn in your style, it doesn't matter. It's substantially similar to Wolverine. And the everyday person is going to be able to look at it and say, yes, that's Wolverine. Then you've infringed, right? And so there's some things like fair use is one thing, and it's another thing that's on that website that I put. I just finished it today because I knew that maybe your listeners would want to read this ebook that sort of just talks about all these different fair use issues. It explains fair use in pretty good detail, and it talks about parody and satire, and I think we maybe have a question about that, or we can talk about it.
Sure.
Parodies is another big thing. But it talks about all that stuff and licensing agreements and I don't know. So that's on the website that I made, strebeck.com/drawn-by-success.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah. We'll put that that link in there.
One caveat: you have to sign up for my email list, of course, to get that free ebook. Yes.
That's what business is all about. We wouldn't expect anything less.
I learned a thing or two about that internet market. Right? Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of move on down the list here. So we had somebody write in and ask about using images of their students or their students' work for marketing materials. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that you're probably going to want to have some sort of disclaimer to have them sign or something if you're going to post an image of somebody. Is that right?
Oh, wait a minute. Is this your question, Bob?
This is not my question.
Okay, but I mean, I think this is applicable to a lot of people, right?
Yeah. So like, so we'll twist it into, let's say that this is something that I would have written in about. Maybe I'm in my classroom. I take a picture of, me and my students all, standing around grinning, congratulating each other for a great class or whatever. What are the legalities behind that? Let's say somebody in there is on the witness protection program or something,
Right. Well, that's a completely separate issue. The one I was talking about is it depends on what state you're in, because this is a state law issue instead of a federal issue.
Right.
So it's a right of publicity issue. Everyone has a property right in their likeness, right? So if you're going to use that in a commercial enterprise, like advertising your courses, then yes, they have a property right in their likeness. So generally you would be paying someone. If it's just some person off the street, they're not. The two problems exist. Will they ever notice, and will they bother suing you, right? If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, will it make a sound?
Right.
Or will they care? It's probably best usually to cover your butt and get some sort of, when the student enters your class, maybe you have a contract that talks about how much it costs and all that, and then you have a clause that just says, hey, I reserve the right to use any photos of you that we take during the class or any work that you produce in the class for promotional purposes on my website.
That would be like a release.
Yeah. So you want something like that. I mean, you could just add that general release into the if you have another, maybe a bigger contract or something that I don't know, do people normally do that? I would always advise you get some sort of agreement, but...
Did you cringe when I called it a disclaimer?
A little bit. It's sort of the opposite. Yeah. But yeah, you definitely want to get it in writing. I mean, they could technically, and it depends on the state. So in California, there's a statutory damage amount of $750 if someone uses your likeness, right? But if you're a celebrity and you actually have a marketable license, or likeness, then you could sue for a lot more if somebody is using your likeness to sell their product, right? Mm-hmm. And there's also trademark issues too. Like with lawyers, there's always a bunch of issues, right? And usually my answer will be no, you shouldn't be doing that, or at least get a contract first, right?
Right. And then, like when you even go to live events and stuff like that, because Bob and I have been through quite a few, and they usually have releases that you sign when you go to a live event, because they do a lot of filming for testimonials and stuff like that, and they want to use any of those videos or pictures and place them for their own marketing on their website as well. So, so yes, I see quite a bit of that.
I've even seen, when you walk into the event, it's pretty plainly posted that, rather than having everyone sign it, it's just sort of a general disclaimer. Anything, if you walk in here, you could be photographed and blah, blah, blah. And so by entering, you are agreeing to that. That may or may not hold up. I don't know. But it's at least something. It's better than nothing, right?
So you got an argument if you get called into court, right?
Right, exactly.
So just the best thing and easiest thing is just ask. Let people know and be upfront. Just let them know.
Yeah, I think the last thing you want is a surprise of you showing up on some guy's website, especially if you don't endorse their product,
Right. Absolutely. I agree. Like, suppose you had a terrible time at the class, but you just happen to take a picture with the guy, on the first day. And by the last day, you hate him. But
got a big fight with him halfway through.
And then so there's more issues. If you want to use the student work and you want to have a student art gallery or something and you didn't get their permission, they have a copyright in everything they're making, right? And so there's no implied license for you to use that stuff unless there is, right? I would get it in writing, right?
Yeah,
and you technically,
stealing
the artwork.
I think generally, just asking ahead of time, like Carlos said, is probably is a good idea to find out where people stand on it. And then if you really want to use it, how strongly do you think do you feel about getting an actual signature? I mean, if somebody just says it's okay, are you cool with that, or do you think better sign this anyways?
I mean, I'd always caution you to sign it, for evidentiary reasons. If there's a problem later, you still want some evidence. You want to sign. You don't have to get it notarized or anything like that, but mean, you could. You could have a notary on duty in the first class, sure. And, this could be just a one-page, it doesn't have to be a complicated contract, just a little one-page agreement that they sign on the first day.
Right. So here's a question that I had, and this is I'm kind of going off the list here, so I'm kind of coming at you. I'm going to see if you can handle one.
All right.
Hot pepper coming at you. So
yeah, it's improvisational now. All right.
Here we go. So here's the thing. A lot of times, getting a contract or finding the right contract can be expensive. Can I go online, find a dummy, and kind of adapt it to my needs, or am I going to be in trouble when I do that kind of stuff? Am I going to miss out on things that I need to have in there?
You can do anything you want, Bob.
I know that. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't necessarily tell you to do that. Yeah. A lot of the online contracts are good. I mean, so I work with game developers specifically, and so if you go on LegalZoom and you get a contract or something like that, it's not really tailored toward game development, right? There's tons of things missing that I think should be if you're hiring an artist for a game. How do you define the revenue from the game? Do you want sequel rights, or do you want expansions and things like that? So the only things that go into a video game that would be big questions if you just have the LegalZoom contract, or even just some free template. Especially with artists, this stuff, the businesses we're in aren't necessarily very common, and so these sort of generic templates aren't always the best thing to get. And you may use it, and you may not actually be reading it and understanding what's in it. So at the very least, if you've used this template, just say, have it run by an attorney just to make sure it's saying what you want it to say, right, and not doing something wrong.
Okay. So you want something more specifically tailored to your situation, is what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. Or you can find a lawyer that, lives out of a backpack and doesn't, maybe charges a little less than other lawyers.
You can shake them down online.
Right.
Yeah, I've known like with a lot of contracts that we've entered into with the Baldo property, for example, a lot of similar situations, but there's always been a time where we'd have to go back in there and hire an attorney to kind of tweak certain things and certain conditions and certain terms to make sure that it's correct, and covering our asses and everybody's getting what they're walking in for. So while they're very similar, there seems to be always like one or two paragraphs in there that need to be in there and customized.
Right. The devil is in the details, as they say. This is, it's that one or two paragraphs. If those are the most important paragraphs, a lot of it's junk that's in every contract, right? 90% of the contract is just, this is the whole agreement and blah blah blah. We have our, the disputes come in California or something. All that stuff is easy. It's the how are you getting paid and all that stuff that you really want to make sure is correct.
And those things are never like in plain English for some reason.
You
guys like your attorneys design it that way or what?
A lot of them do, and a lot of them use very cryptic language just to justify their paychecks. Right. There's two schools of contract writing now, and there's the very old school style, and then there's people like me who, they tell you, do you want to write the contract for a judge, or do you want to write it for the two people who are actually entering the contract so they understand what's going on? And so I try to make it something that both of the two parties can read rather than, the judge later. And a lot of judges don't even like that stuff. If you start using heretofore and here and after and words like that, it's terrible. I try to get, and a lot of the contracts I work from, I'm basically re-editing the entire thing because I wanted to actually read. See someone back there. I wanted to.
Am I being robbed? Yes, you guys are catching this on video, right? I'm being robbed.
Yes. You have a visitor.
Right. We like to. We're gonna have to pay him for his likeness.
He doesn't seem to care.
Call a lawyer.
You're gonna have to have him sign a release.
Right.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
Hopefully he's over 18, so we'll get sued for that.
Well, we've got an attorney on hand, so that's good.
That's right.
We've got a witness here. Let's take.
Never a dull moment.
Let's hop back on our list here real quick. Now we've got a couple of questions on here that look like they might be better for an accountant, but I'm going to ask them anyways, just in case.
Right.
So we have one that's asking about claiming income, and the question really is, do we have to claim all project income? I think that's pretty clear, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So is it necessary to claim all project income for individuals?
All right, so I am not a tax lawyer, and I don't know a huge amount about taxes. And actually, I should preface this, everything I say, this is sort of general legal information. It's not advice. If you really need legal advice, you should contact a lawyer, because everyone's facts are very different, so the actual situation could be pretty different. Just like with getting these templates off the internet, the actual situation could change. One tiny fact could change the whole thing. So get a lawyer if you think you need a lawyer. Don't just listen to me, right?
I'm going to just listen to you, Zach. I trust you, man. We go way back.
But if people are shopping for a lawyer, they can call Zack, because he's a lawyer.
Of course.
That's right.
Don't call me, actually. I mean, I probably won't pick up the phone, but email me.
It'll be 3 in the morning for him, so you got to be careful
That's
when
right.
you call.
Like I'm sleeping. So yeah, I'm not a tax lawyer, but let me just tell you, what I remember from my income tax classes, any net accession to wealth, which is pretty much any income, needs to be claimed, right? So you can get deductions, if you spent half of it on as legitimate business expenses or some other legitimate deduction. Sure, you can deduct it, but there's no reason why you wouldn't have to claim all the income that you have, right? I mean, that's my understanding. Everything else.
That's the right answer.
I mean, basically how it works is everything coming in has to be claimed, right? It's there, but you chip away at it by deducting things.
Right.
So,
right. Okay. So that talks a little bit about the next question that we had, which is, do state laws differ? Are state laws? Try that again.
Right. Well, I'm going to take that one.
Differ? Yeah. Do state laws differ with regard to how artists are taxed? And what is tax deductible? So again, Zack is not an accountant, but we're throwing this one at him anyways.
Yeah, and the only actual tax experience I have, it's with federal income tax, so I don't really know anything about, except for doing my taxes. I don't really have any California income tax expertise. So I'm going to say, yeah, talk to an accountant. That's what I tell my clients. Just talk to an accountant, because they know more than me.
Well, that is interesting. So a guy like you who travels around a lot, I mean, how do your income comes through the United States mainly?
Right. Right.
You are a United States resident, so I'm assuming that you're going to pay taxes somewhere. How does that work?
In California.
California.
I mean, yes. Well, I mean, I have a business address in San Francisco, so I guess that's but I think after you're out of the country for a certain amount of time, which I think 330 days, which I didn't meet this year. I was home in the U.S. for about 4 months, so I didn't meet the threshold, so it doesn't matter. I'm stuck paying taxes just like everyone else. And I think even if you have foreign bank accounts, I think there's new rules where you have to claim what's in that too. I don't have a foreign bank account. I have a U.S. PayPal account. I have U.S. bank accounts. It's all U.S. based. I'm not a scam.
So do you get taxed at all in Japan for anything? Or I mean, obviously you get probably
you have
taxed
to
on
pay
the stuff that you buy.
You have to pay sales tax.
Right. Yeah. I mean, not for any income that you're bringing that you're bringing into the country, or I guess money that you're bringing into the country.
This is one of those gray areas. We'll just call it a gray area.
Let's move on, shall we?
I mean, I don't know.
Next question.
I mean, this is a big.
Zack will be getting a knock on his door any minute now. So
this is a big the podcast without him.
In the digital nomad community, they talk about this a lot. Because we're tourists. We're generally on tourist visas. When I was in China, I was on a work visa or a business visa because I was actually working with someone there. But generally, because we don't get paid there, we're just sort of doing work here. But we see it as no different than someone going on vacation and checking their work email on vacation or doing some sort of work, right? I don't know. The problem is it's so new that no one actually no one's been deported over this. It's not to my knowledge anyway, but who knows? I may be the first. We'll see. Yes, congratulations, me.
You better hurry up and get to these questions, Bob.
That's right.
I know, I'm getting through them as quickly as I can. So here's the next one.
Taking them out of there.
We want to define intellectual property.
Okay, all right. This one I had to look up. It's funny because I'm an intellectual property lawyer, but I didn't have a concise definition. And the one I found was, it's things that are created, the creations of the mind, right? So it's basically these sort of intangible things, which actually copyright's it's an intangible property right on something that actually does exist. You know, it has to be tangible, or else you don't have a copyright in it. So your idea actually doesn't get protection. So there's 4 types of intellectual property. This is what I take notes on. Patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets. So generally for artists, you're going to be mostly concerned with copyrights and trademarks. But patents are protecting useful inventions, new inventions, right? Trade secrets are protecting sort of business secrets, like the formula for Coca-Cola, right? It's a secret, no one knows what it is, but it's also protected because they generally will have confidentiality agreements and things like that. Because with most intellectual property, you're going to be registering it, right? So you register a trademark or you register a copyright, and it's out there. But if it's something that's secret, you have to keep it in. So you do that with contracts, agreements. Copyright, excuse me, it protects from duplication of your work, right? Any, you know, it could be a dance choreography, it could be a movie, a book, a drawing, anything like that. So that's for stopping people from making copies or making, they call derivative works, which is like, I use your character, but I'm making a new story with him. Well, you can't do that because that's violating your copyright, right? And then trademarks are the last one. They protect your brand, right? So the reason you have a trademark is to stop other people from using that same brand so that people who buy your products aren't confused as to who they're getting the products from. So if I want Bob Ostrom's soda, right? Whatever, I don't know. I'm not funny. So I don't, you come up with something funny.
It's uncanny that you came up with that because I've just developed a new soda.
That's his next business.
So you
hey, wait! You must have infringed on my intellectual property.
Yeah, I saw your trade secrets. Anyway, you want consumers to know that they're getting it from Bob Ostrom and not from, you know, some guy in Malaysia or something that's, you know, making counterfeit versions of it, or that's making scarves with your face on it or something like that. Anything like that, you know, you don't want them to think that that's coming from you if it's really from another source, because you can't guarantee its quality and you can't guarantee that it's being sold in the right way. Right? So that's what trademark is protecting. That's about it. So those are all the major types of intellectual property, and that's why we protect them.
Let me ask you a question, Zach. I ran across this question a few days ago in a forum. It was, and I'm asking because I know a lot of people that listen to the show are into children's books or children's book illustrators or writers or what have you. You have a writer and you have an illustrator on a book, right? Mm-hmm. How does the artist protect his intellectual property in as far as the likeness of the characters and the development of those characters? How would something like that hash out? You know what I mean?
Well, first I would say it's probably best to get a written agreement between the two of you, right? You could either split the intellectual property rights, so you have copyright in it, right? And you also maybe have trademark. So if it's the Berenstain Bears, right, it's a series of books. It's not just one book. So you want people to know that when they buy Berenstain Bears books, it's coming from you. And I can't remember who used to do those. And they still
Jan and Stan Berenstain.
Bob Woodcock.
Yeah. All right. There you go. You see what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that you know that that's what you're getting. So, you know, you would want an agreement. You don't want to just sort of be buddies and get together and do that, because what happens now if the writer wants to go and make other books with this and sort of reuse your illustrations or something like that, you know, you're not going to be, as the illustrator, you're not going to be happy about that. So if you had an agreement in the first place, you know, that sort of doled out who has what rights, or if, you know, you could say, hey, you can't go make other books without my permission. Because technically what happens is if you go 50-50 on a project, even if, well, so I shouldn't say 50-50, you collaborate on a product. And someone writes a couple lines, enough to be copyrightable, let's say one page of text, and another person writes the rest of the book and you do all the illustrations. You all equally own that copyright. So you each have the equal right to exploit that copyright as well. So you could be licensing out, I think, the entire book, right, to another company. If the other two don't agree with that, then, you know, they're SOL, you know, they gave up those rights when they worked together with you. So if you have some sort of an agreement between the three of you that says, hey, maybe we need a majority vote before anyone can you know, license these characters to something else, or you have to buy us out if you want to make your own book, right? So I would caution you to get an agreement. Every time you're writing something or doing something with other people, you should have a partnership agreement, at least, if not forming an LLC that has its own special terms, which I think is the next question, maybe.
That is. It's that. Wow, nice
Well,
segue.
let me get back.
Segue.
Can I get back to that one for real quick? There's because I know that not only happens in books, but also happens in games. A good friend of mine created some characters. They were approached to create a game. He created all the characters for the game, all the cards and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So does he? I guess it's in the way you structure your initial contract when you enter the deal. But I guess he can own the characters in the way they look and the way he designed them. If the company then decides to do something else, changes the game or sells the game, and they don't want the way the game is played, like in other words, I'm the illustrator that created all the visual, the boards, all the graphics, but the way the game is played was designed by someone else. I guess my partner in this case. But they don't want it. The people purchasing the game wants to change the gameplay, the rules, but they want to keep the graphics. What happens in a situation like that? I mean, that might be a little broad.
Are you asking about the purchaser of the game wanting to change the rules of the game?
Yes, I mean, so I enter. Let's say Bob designed this game, and I'm working on all the graphics, all the cards, and everything else. Right. We're going to all these game shows and stuff like that, trying to sell the game to a big company. They're interested in the graphics and the way it kind of looks and the feel of the game, but they want to change the rules and the way it's played. But they want to keep all the graphics. So Bob, in essence, what he put forward in the game is they're changing that, but they want to keep everything I did. So Bob and I initially were partners in this thing, right? We created it, but now the end buyer is changing what Bob did. So how does that affect how would that affect our agreement?
You're kind of cut me out of the action, man.
I'm not 100% sure what would happen there. I mean, Bob certainly would not be happy, and it depends on whether you had an agreement when you first got together. I mean, technically, the illustrations you did are probably yours. I mean, you haven't published it yet, right? So you've just created it. All you did was create the card art, right? And he's created the rules of the game. Yeah, and technically, the mechanics of a game, at least as it stands now, aren't actually protectable, except by patent. Copyright won't protect how a game works. It'll protect how you've written the rules, right? So the text of the rules might be protected, but the actual game itself isn't really protected. So, but what Bob created, probably, except for his writing of the rules, probably isn't protectable anyway. So, I don't know if Bob has a big leg to stand on in that situation. But if I was working with someone, if I was collaborating with someone, I would definitely get a collaboration agreement set up. The other question is, and something that sort of I missed talking about before, depending on whether you're an employee or an independent contractor or a partner, who gets the rights can sort of change. So if you're an independent contractor, which means that you're sort of on your own doing the work, even though you're working for someone else or getting paid by someone else, you could own all that work that you've done, all the artwork. If you're an employee and you're working in the scope of your employment, right? So if you're doing it during your day job, or if you stay late and you're using the work computer to do the art, that could be owned by the employer, right? And so if you're working at a game company, all that work that you're doing is owned by the game company. But if you're sort of partners, and one person isn't paying the other person, then that's sort of what I was talking about before, a collaboration rather than I'm paying you to do work.
Right.
So it depends. The relationship there really changes who owns the rights.
Yes, I mean, it really just kind of shines light a little bit on how complicated something can be, where when you're starting into an agreement, you don't really see these things coming up, but they're also, they're very real possibilities. So yeah, I mean, so if somebody created something or had, so if Bob, for example, had input in the development of the characters or the graphics, where he was a sounding board, so you want to be fair and probably want to compensate him somehow. Right. But all those things need to be considered up front. There's just a lot of stuff that you don't know what you don't know.
Well, that's a good point too. I mean, even if they don't have a legal right to things, there's also real world business considerations. Do you want to burn every bridge, and not work with Bob anymore? I mean, there's a lot of things that are not about the law that you should think about, right? I mean, this is your partner. Do you want to continue working in the future? Well, maybe you should cut him in on part of your deal, right? Or make a push for him, you know. So it's not all contracts, and it's not all law. You know, a lot of it is, you know, just business common sense, right?
And ethics.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zach had a really great segue into the last question, so we'll try to let's see if we can keep that hot for now. So you started to talk a little bit about LLCs and that kind of thing. So the last question we have here is, what is the best type of organizational structure for a freelance artist? C Corp, S Corp, LLC. What's the best way to go on that? And what are those different initials stand for?
Oof. All right, let's start with...
You're going to roll like one whole semester into a 10-second... Yeah.
My corporation's class. Okay, so, well, a C Corp is what you normally think of as a stock corporation, right? That's your general corporation. It has a board of directors, it has, you know, executives, it has shareholders, you know, the shareholders own the company, but the board of directors sort of manages it, or does sort of the high-level management, and the executives do the day-to-day management. I mean, and so for a solo freelance artist, the C Corp is probably not what you need. You know, there's a ton of regulation around it. There's a ton of formalities that you have to do. You know, you have to have annual meetings, and you know, you have to have, you know, if you have no shareholders, you know, I mean, what's the point of having all that? You're actually taxed twice. So any money that comes into the corporation has to pay taxes on it, and then anything you get paid out of the corporation, you also have to pay taxes on. So that's probably, and again, this is, you know, talk to an accountant and talk to a real lawyer, or a lawyer. You're a lawyer.
Unlike what we have today. Come on, Zach.
Man, there goes that marketing right out the window.
No one will make it this far. Don't worry. We're almost an hour in. No one cares.
Yeah, Zach isn't a real lawyer. He just pretends to be one on our shows.
On the internet. No, but, you know, talk to a lawyer, but C Corp is probably not the way you want to go. So an S Corp is the same as a C Corp, but there's a change. It's just a tax election. All it does is it makes the taxes lower. This is how do you explain it in the S Corp? It's mostly a tax thing. It's going to help you tax-wise, and so I'm not a tax guy, so this is another thing you should ask your accountant about. But there's certain restrictions. You know, you can only have 50 shareholders or less, I think. You know, but again, if you're a single entity or you're just a sole proprietor that's working, you know, an S Corp is probably too much too. Unless you have other people coming in, it doesn't really make much sense. Just from a formality standpoint, you know, you have to do all these things. You have to file annual reports and things like that. I mean, what's the point of all that? So the LLC is good if you need to form some sort of entity. And so the reasons you would form an entity, there's two. There's, you know, tax reasons, and there's limited liability, right? So you want to limit any liability, and say if someone sues you, they're going to be suing the LLC or the corporation rather than you personally. So the LLC is pretty good. There's a lot less formality to it. You can be a single member LLC, so in a lot of states, not every state. So a lot of this depends on the state also, where you're forming the corporation. You know, an LLC is good. So if you feel that, you know, and any lawyer will tell you, yes, it's always best to limit liability, right? And that's our job, to limit your liability and limit your risk. So yes, it's better to form an LLC than to not, if you're going to be doing business. If you're going to be taking people's money, you know, and there's a chance that maybe you've committed copyright infringement and now someone wants to sue you. Well, no, your LLC committed the copyright infringement because you did the work through that. So now, if the LLC has no money, then the LLC is just basically going to go bankrupt, and you don't get your personal money taken. That's how it's supposed to work. If you, you know, there's ways that you could lose the limited liability protection. So by not putting enough money into the LLC and by just treating it as an extension of yourself, that can, you know, they can reach through the LLC and grab your money. So there are dangers to it too. It's not foolproof. But yeah, does it make sense for a single freelance artist? Maybe not. Probably not. I mean, you know, in California, there's an $800 minimum tax that an LLC has to pay every year. So do you want to pay that $800 every year just to have LLC by your name? I mean, it might make sense for some people, but it wouldn't make sense for others. So that's sort of a thing you have to talk to a lawyer or an accountant about your specific situation about. But it's not for everyone.
When I started my career and I started freelance, actually when I started having a physical office, I developed a C corp, and then it was later changed to an S corp, not too long after, which is what I have now. And with the Baldo strip, something like that where you have a partner would probably make more sense if you had an LLC, correct?
Probably, just because it's easier. I mean, I don't know what you're in Florida. I actually don't know is it a Florida S corp?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is I mean, generally there's, some more formalities that go with a corporation than with an LLC. With an LLC, you basically don't have to do anything as far as, I mean, you have members, you don't really have shareholders. You just have people who own shares. It's just a little less oppressive than the corporation.
Right.
An LLC is good. It was created because people wanted to get that limited liability without having to deal with all the tax issues that come with corporations. With an LLC, you're taxed. It's called pass-through or flow-through taxation. So any money that comes into the LLC is just basically passed on to your personal income. So you don't have to do a separate income tax return for the LLC. It's just to you. And if you have multiple members, then you're just sort of split up evenly, or however you do it. You can do it by contract. You can split it up 90-10 or 60-40, whatever you want. But generally, it's equally by default.
And that's the way the S corp is set up as well. You're just being taxed personally, not through the corporation.
Right.
How about you, Bob? How are you set up?
I'm not protected in any way, shape, or form. So anybody who wants to sue me, just come take everything I own.
You're lucky I don't sue people, Bob.
Luckily, I don't own anything, so
yeah, there you go.
They can take my minivan, and I guess that's about it. So,
actually,
so I got that going.
You got your fingers crossed for that one.
Right.
Kind of hoping somebody else come take that thing. Let me tell you something. Driving around that thing, pretty cool, man. People look at me and they're like, "Oh yeah."
That's right.
I'm living large, Zach. I'm living large, man.
Hey, well, I get in a crowded Japanese subway train every day, so
That's got to be fun. All right, well, so we've run through all our questions. We've taken up about an hour of your time here.
Let me check one more time before.
Okay. All right, I was just going to sign off. Sorry about that.
All right, hold on. Let me do some last-minute checking here.
Hey, who's that behind you, Carlos? Whoa!
Oh my God, am I being broken in? Don't scare me like that, Bob.
So Zach, it's been what? How long has it been? 11 years since we.
11 years, yeah. 2003, I think they closed down. So.
Yeah, it's been a long time. That's pretty cool seeing you again after all this time.
Since then, I've been a failed artist, a casino blackjack dealer, and
I forgot about that. Yeah, you were working at the casino for a while. Yeah, how did that go? Did you like that?
I hated it. I liked it in the beginning. When you start having the same conversations with the same people every day about them losing, and everyone's just sort of staring at you because you're taking their money, it gets to you after a while.
Yeah.
Pretty repetitive. That's why I like what I'm doing now. Every new client is a new story, and new issues to work with. I love it.
So when did you start your business, your lawyer business?
I've been in business for a little over a year.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So if somebody wanted to come hire you, let's say that they had a question about something, or they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can go to my website, strebeck.com. It's down there. Check that out, and there's a contact form there. You can just send me an email with sort of a quick rundown of what your problem is, and then you do a free consultation, so we can do a phone call or a video call or whatever you want to do. I won't give you legal advice over the phone call, but you can tell me more of the facts of the situation, and I'll sort of tell you, well, this is what you could be expecting as far as fees go. I don't like to charge hourly. I generally would just give you a flat fee, for what it would cost.
So you work on a project basis. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just, they call it unbundled legal services. Like, it's just limited scope. I'm not your lawyer for everything. I'm just your lawyer for this one specific thing. But that's good because I'm not going to send you some crazy bill at the end of it.
Gotcha. And then this can apply for anybody who lives throughout the United States, right?
It depends. It depends on, I'm a California lawyer, so if we're talking about California law, then that's no problem. If you want me to, explain the intricacies of New Jersey law, well, I'm from New Jersey, but I don't know anything about New Jersey law, so that probably isn't good. So it depends. I mean, I may have to reject clients for geographical reasons, which, that's sort of a trope or a relic of the past of the law, but. It is
Gotcha.
what it is. We have to work within those rules.
Okay, so if I sign a contract and it says arbitration takes place in whatever state it happens to take place in,
Right.
how does that work? Let's say we had a problem with that. I'm working with somebody who's in, I don't know, say they're in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and here I am in North Carolina, and now we have to arbitrate this contract because
Right.
Carlos pulled an end around on me, and I got to take him to court. Do I actually have to appear in Florida if I need to?
You could hire a lawyer to represent you in Florida that we could just show up to the arbitration. Usually an arbitration depending on how complex it is, it's going to be very short. For a trial, it's going to take months and years of appearances. But with an arbitration, they probably listen to the stories in one day and then give you a decision right after that. Or you could try mediating. You could try instead of going to arbitration. I studied mediation and arbitration and other alternative dispute resolution things, and so I served as a mediator for the LA courts for a little while as a volunteer. And so there are ways to resolve your disputes without actually going to the arbitration. But you sign a contract that says you have to go to Florida. If you don't like it, don't sign the contract.
Gotcha.
You can always negotiate that stuff.
Right.
Unless you're working for Disney or something, it depends on the power balance,
Gotcha.
But anything's negotiable in a contract. You can always print a new one out.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So, Carlos, did we have anything else come in, or should we wrap up?
Yeah, we got one question. And I see immediately what the problem is, and I'm not even an attorney.
You want to take this one, Carlos?
Yeah, I'll take this one. No. The person says, I painted artwork on life-size fiberglass bulls. It was the customer's fiberglass bulls, but my concept design and artwork. I did not sign any release of rights. I am being told that the work was a work for hire or contract labor. I see it as I was put my artwork on their substrate or their product. Now, do I legally still own the rights? I want to create promotional products and souvenirs and gifts of the designs of the bulls. I have painted 12 bulls now that are displayed all over town. So basically, someone got her to design these fiberglass bulls. They had the fiberglass bulls, and then she went ahead and painted them and designed them. And they're telling her him that they don't have the right to it, that it was a work for hire or a contract for labor. It would have seemed to me that this is something that she would have handled at the very beginning and should have been in the contract, whether a clear understanding of whether it was work for hire to begin with.
Right. So generally, and again, I would have to really give an answer, you would have to talk to them and suss out all the details. But generally, you're either an employee or you're an independent contractor in something like this. So if you're an employee, or I think in certain types of work, if they're done in that relationship, even by an independent contractor, they could be owned. They could be works made for hire, right? Under the I have a blog post about this also, so I'll put this up on the website that I talked about before. It's strebeklaw.com/drawnbysuccess. Under copyright law, certain types of works are automatically works made for hire, right? And so they could very well own it. It depends on the situation. So it depends on how much control they had over it. And if it's a nebulous situation there, then it could be an employee relationship or it could be a contractor relationship. The problem is, so what do you do? I mean, what's the value of it? Is it worth going to court over? You could maybe, if it's under $10,000 in a lot of states, $10,000, you could go to small claims court and make your argument, and it's much cheaper than actually having to go to a real trial. So, that may be an option. I worked in small claims court, and so it's and you could maybe get a mediation going or something like that, get it settled out of court. It depends on where this person is. I don't know.
Yeah, I would recommend you, before you go through all the trouble of trying to sue somebody, just if you signed a contract, take the contract, and you don't understand the contract, take it to an attorney and have them decipher it for you so that you understand what's in there, first of all, so you know where you stand, and then proceed from there. So.
Yeah, you never know. There could be a small bit of the contract. Like I said, it's those little bits of the contract that maybe you don't understand, that it says that this is a work made for hire under U.S. copyright law or something like that. You didn't understand when you were signing it, or you didn't bother to read it, and that's very common. But I mean, look, I'm a lawyer, I'm a contract lawyer, and I don't read those terms of service that I have to agree to every time. I just click it, and I'm not going to post anything valuable on the websites, that I'm using, But you have to know the risk that you're getting into when you A, sign a contract, or B, start going into business with someone.
And Bob and I have talked about why this happens. I think in a couple of past shows, and I think it's because a lot of artists are sometimes in a situation where they're afraid to lose the work, so they don't want to like make waves, and they're afraid to kind of bring these things up in the beginning for fear that they'll screw things up at the beginning. And I'm always of the mindset that if it's not going to work, you may as well find out at the beginning rather than later after you've done a bunch of the work. And it seems here this person's done 12 bulls already, and the person doesn't really know what kind of contract they've entered into. So that's a lot of work to commit yourself to without understanding what rights you've given away and what you can actually do with those designs. So it just seems to me that it's just time well worth spending getting it right up front.
I think the key words in that question were work for hire. I think if you are a work for hire, you've really traded away a lot of your rights. So you might want to take another look at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And I'll say, what were you just talking about, Carlos? At the beginning, if you're walking on eggshells in the beginning to just ask for one simple clarification or a change in the contract, then what's going to happen down the line, like you say, when something goes wrong or you actually get in an argument. Everyone's friends at the beginning of the business deal, but you have to, and that's my job, is to think about 2 months down the line or years down the line when something's gone wrong and now you're not friends. So what does the contract say, or what's all that about? That's why we always get it in writing.
Excellent point. Okay, and that's the last question I have for you guys.
All right.
Cool. All right, so let's wrap up. So Zack, again, can you tell people where to find you?
Okay, go to strebeck.law.com, or, well, I don't know, I'm boardgamelawyer.com and mobilegamelawyer.com. I have a million of these things. And if you're interested in traveling and you want to become a digital nomad like me, I blog at alawyer.abroad.com. So that's, I just talk about, keeping your clients' data safe and, how to find flights and things like that, how to get mail when you're on the road all the time. That was the one thing that took me a year to solve, but I finally figured it out. So good. Yeah, so strebeck.law.com and alawyer.abroad.com. So.
All right, if they want to get those forms, it would be strebeck.law.com/drawn by success, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool. So we'll add those links in there.
All right.
Zack, thanks for joining us. What time is it over there now? Is it 1 o'clock in the morning yet?
It is 13 after midnight. 1213. So yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. Bob, thanks for introducing us all to Zack.
Yeah, Zack, it was great to see you again after all this time.
You too. Yes.
Yeah, we'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah,
we'll have to do it again sometime.
Right,
I think there's a lot of different areas where that we can still touch on, and maybe do a webinar or something, or maybe do something down the road where we can kind of bring you into the fold here and maybe get people to go a little deeper with you, because I think it's an important service that you provide. I mean, a lot of these people that enter into things, it's really costly. It's a lot more costly on the back end than it is to pay an attorney up front, just to make sure you're on the right path. Not to mention, the stress and the aggravation that it removes. Because I mean, honestly, nobody needs the added stress of dealing with legal issues and not knowing where you stand on stuff and feeling like you're getting screwed, and it'll shorten your life by years.
Right. And if you get paid for your time, this is time that you're spending dealing with these things rather than working or actually doing something productive. So yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right. Any last words from you, Bob?
No, I'm just going to say again, Zack, it was great to see you, and we'll stay in touch.
Right back at you.
Excellent. Thanks again, Zack.
Sayonara, as they say.
So how do you say goodbye in Japanese?
Sayonara is just sort of the regular goodbye, right? Everyone knows that. But that's sort of when you're going goodbye for a long time. Actually, I don't really know. There's a shorter one. Oyasumi would be good night. So there you go.
We can say, what is it? Asumie?
Oyasumi, which. It's funny, I remember it because I think, oh yeah, sue me. That was the so oh yeah, sue me is I mean, my Japanese is terrible. Hopefully no one out there speaks Japanese. Is laughing
okay, oh yeah, sue me to you.
All right. You guys have a good
You
day.
can tell Zack's an attorney because he relates everything to like,
That's right.
legalese. But anyway, thanks for everyone that watched live. I thank you for taking your time and checking us out. And for those of you who will catch the replay, I hope you get a lot of information, valuable information from the time that we've shared with Zack. And also, if you have any other questions that didn't get answered, put them in the comments under YouTube or wherever the hell you're watching this, and we'll maybe shoot them back to Zack and maybe do another show at a more convenient time for Zack.
I love getting questions because there are always ideas for new blog posts. So if someone asks a question, you may see it up on my blog a week later. That's usually how I get ideas for those posts. So yeah.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So put the questions here or go to Zack's website and shoot the question directly to him.
Definitely.
So once again, thanks all for showing up and supporting us on the Hangouts with Carlos and Bob. All these Fridays that we're doing. So anyway. If that concludes it, Bob, where can people find you? What have you got going on?
I've got some really great stuff coming up, Carlos. You can find me at bobteachesart.com. I'm going to be starting some Friday classes coming up real soon, so I'll be putting a note up on the website about that. And then I'm thinking, Carlos, maybe next week we could tag a little demo on the end of the show there, and kind of show people what I'm up to. But come check me out at Bob Teaches Art if you want to learn more about Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, or I also do tutoring. So we got an echo going on there. What happened there?
I don't know. I may take you up on that, Bob.
Oh man, you come and see me, Zack.
and InDesign. You can see my InDesign skills in my new ebook.
That can get you through InDesign in a day. Come on, man, come and see me.
All right.
Cool. All right. So, and I'm Carlos Castellanos, co-founder or founder of DrawnBySuccess.com and creator of the Baldo comic strip. Keep an eye out for the group coaching that we'll be launching in the next week. We were supposed to have the pages up this week, but it's the beginning of the new year and we're still in a rough state here. So, so we'll get that up soon for you guys. And until next Friday, see you guys. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks
Thanks
for having me on. Bye.
Okay. Take care, Zack.
Bye.